Alap, this is Mugdha, and she is
I,
going to be moderator,
I,
and this is Supriya who is going to host and be there throughout the
sure, sure, no problem. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Alap Shah. Dr. Alap Shah has completed his bachelor's degree on physiotherapy from Chaitanya Medical Foundation's College of Physiotherapy, Pune in 2004, and master's degree with neurology as his elective from St. G.S. Medical College and KEM Hospital in 2007. He is a licensed physiotherapist in United States of America. He is currently practicing in Thane and surrounding areas. He has extensive experience in adult neuro rehab, post-surgical rehab for musculoskeletal conditions. He also has worked extensively in conservative and post-operative spine rehab, being a part of a team VR Spine. Dr. Alap has worked in US in various settings of skilled nursing, inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, and hospital, acute and ICU settings during a recent visit to US. He was also clinical instructor for DPT students since 2007. He has completed more than 50,000 hours of clinical practice. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Uh, so, Hi everyone, and I would like to thank Anjali ma'am and everyone at Somaya College for giving me this opportunity to speak on something which I really liked when I was working in US. I'm not sure if how many people are aware of this, but I think it's a concept which I feel a lot of people don't use it. So today I thought of presenting this concept, which is very easy to understand and it's very analytical. It helps us in our patient treatments and to exactly understand where we are leading the patient. So many a times we are treating patients and we are not able to get to the goals what patients want. So this quality indicator, sorry, uh, hello, yeah, should I continue? Yeah, so hello. Uh,
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
yeah, okay, so yeah, so can you keep that introduction just for me that then I'll be starting my PowerPoint after that. So when I speak, I can just refer to that so everyone else can see. Yeah. So going to the point again, when I worked in the US, I saw that we are mandated to use some kind of functional scoring, which has evolved over a period of time uh, for therapists and patients and their families to understand, because whatever we treat and whatever we do, ultimately there has to be some kind of quality to it, and it should be measurable. That's why it's called as quality indicative measures. So when we are treating patients, we should be having some kind of a tool, or it's kind of, I would say, it's our weapon to make sure that we are getting our patients to their goals. This is right now I'm speaking is mainly for mobility goals. So I'll start with the introduction points. I'll try to analyze what is written over there. Quality indicative measures are the best tools for functional evaluation. Now, these tools, they are supposed to grade the functional scores of the patients. And basically, it also leads us to how they are improving. QIMS helps therapists to score patients on their function scores at the start of care. So we always do the scoring at the start of care or when we start do the initial evaluation. And as they progress through the therapy, we are also getting the benefit of scoring them as that they get better. The second point, it not only grades the patient but helps the therapist to realistically set goals based on all the patient factors. Now, when we set the goals, we can't set goals on certain factors or just initial factors what we see. Like, for example, we see a stroke patient. So the example here is like when we see a stroke patient, we want the patient to walk. Now there are now in US they also consider what was the prior level of function of a patient, whether the patient needs to do the stairs or what was he working. So we need to know a lot of those other factors before we start. So it helps us to realistically set those goals. Third is it is a wonderful tool to monitor progress in a given time span of treatment. So that is the reason we need to make sure that we use this tool and we know that we are treating the patient. Say if we start with a time period of 1 month and how the patient will progress and where will the patient go off, how much will he recover. This is an excellent guiding tool for patients and their families to understand how the patient is progressing and if there are any limitations, because it provides a numeric value to our treatment. So it makes it easy for our patients to explain to them that this is the score the patient is on right now, and we are looking at getting him to this so and so score. It's a number basically. Everything converts into a number. So whatever you are doing with the patient, you are trying to do any kind of therapy, whatever treatments you are doing, it ultimately has to come to a number. QIMS helps to provide complete data analytics of patient condition, initial level of function, expected outcomes, and prognosis. So this is basically the whole, the what is QIMS. So what I'll do is now I'll go to my PowerPoint and then from there we'll be able to talk more. Just let me switch on my PowerPoint. Yeah, I'll just do the slide screen sharing. Yeah, I'll share screen now. Yeah. So is it visible? My screen is it? Is everyone able to see? I'm sure I'm just making sure before I go ahead.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, all right. So now again, coming to the point with the introduction, which we said. So what happens is, I think I just have to make sure that whatever is written, it's not. Yeah. So what is QIMS now? QIMS helps in scoring patients of their initial level of function for bed mobility, transfers, walking, stairs, and wheelchair mobility, depending on the level of assist a patient needs. So when we see a patient, I'll be giving examples of some of my own patients and how I set their goals. So QIMS, we are looking as a physiotherapist, we are basically working on bed mobility. In bed mobility, we have rolling and supine to sit. In transfers, we have, I'll go to that point later on. Let me just, let me go ahead right now. I'm sorry, this is, I have put a slide for what all we see in bed mobility, transfers, walking, stairs, and wheelchair. So the second point says is QIMS helps in planning short-term and long-term goals to improve patient outcomes based on their initial level of function and prior level of functioning. So when we see a patient for the first time, and we know that this patient is going to take a little long time to recover, what we do is we need to set short-term goals and we need to set long-term goals for our patient. That what we, you can set goals for 15 days and long-term can be at, goals which you are expecting at the time of discharge or when you are going to finish with the treatment of the patient. The third point says QIMS helps in understanding patient limitations and barriers to recovery. So when we do initial scoring and we analyze, evaluation has to provide an analysis also. So when we analyze the patient, then we can discuss with ourselves, or if we are a team, we discuss with the team to understand what are the limitations and barriers to the recovery. This mainly helps us to set realistic goals. Now I'm going to the second slide, which says patient conditions. Now QIMS basically is used in adult patients. In whatever facilities I worked, I've always worked in adult patients. So where we have patient with loss of complete or partial mobility, it can be a lot of conditions which we all see, can be stroke, spinal cord injury, it can be traumatic brain injury. We have post-surgical conditions. It can be anything like hip, knee arthroplasty. And then there are cases of severe debility, Now we were seeing patients of COVID and they had severe debility, so they had lost their mobility. All this under various and other various conditions under musculoskeletal, neurological, and cardiorespiratory system. So whatever the systems we are working on, but it should be loss of mobility. It can be partial or complete. Now again, as I was saying, what we are looking at, what are the functional activities? Basically in US or even in India, there is no difference, but basically that's where they grade, we grade our patients. So this slide is important. Bed mobility is rolling on both sides, supine to sit. Then we see patients we want them to improve on their transfers. Now transfers are basically sit to stand, bed to chair. In the chair, it can be commode, wheelchair, or any other chair. Then toilet. So commode is bedside commode and toilet is walking up to the toilet. And the last thing is car transfers. So then walking in US and wherever I worked, it was always they start with 10 feet. Then they used to grade for 50 feet, 150 feet. It has even and uneven surfaces. Basically uneven, they used to always grade 10 feet. It can be modified Indian conditions, we can do more. And one thing which they always include is 2 turns. The patient should be able to turn 2 times. Stairs is basically we do, normally this is 1 step is called as a curb. 4 steps is what they consider to get into the house normally. More than 4 is 12 steps. In which we are grading with or without use of handrail and assist or any assistive device. The last thing is wheelchair mobility. Now, wheelchair mobility is for patients where we have patients like paraplegics, so who are not going to have goals in probably some of the patients may not have goals for walking or stairs. So we set goals for bed mobility transfers, and then we can set goals for wheelchair mobility. Wheelchair mobility can also work for patients who are not having they won't be able to really walk too long. So they may be using wheelchair. So maneuvering and mobility with turns 50 feet and 150 is what we normally grade, manual and motorized. So manual wheelchair or motorized. In India, we use a lot more of manual. In US, they use equally motorized wheelchairs also. So now going to the next is the coding. Now this is the most important thing. This slide is a little big and it is covering all the levels of assist and coding together. So now I'll just speak. The grading is from 1 to 6. If you see from the lower part of the slide, it's 1 and then going up to 6. So in 1, the patient is totally dependent. So helper does all of the effort, patient does none of the effort to complete the activity, or the assistance of 2 or more helpers is required for the patient to complete the activity. So when you see a patient and you are assisting completely 1 person or 2 people, then you have to start doing activity not graded, that is little lower. I'll speak about it later on. Then we go to the grade 2. Grade 2 is basically when the helper does more than half the effort. Helper lifts or hold the trunks or limbs and provides more than half the effort. So this is grade 2. Grade 3 is partial or moderate assistance. That's what we call. Helper does less than half the effort. Helper lifts, hold and supports trunk or limbs, but provides less than half of the effort. So mainly you have to understand when you are helping the patient, it's your own acumen which will help you to decide, is it a 2 or a 3? When you feel that you help then more than half, the effort is yours, then it is going to be 2. If it is less than half and patient is contributing to the effort to get up or whatever, it is any activity, then it is 3. Fourth is basically, we call that as supervision or touching assistance. Now here we have the patient, it is also called as contact guard, touching or contact guard assistance. Helper provides the verbal cues or touching, steadying assistance as patient completes the activity, and assistance may be provided throughout the activity or intermittently. Fifth is setup or cleanup. Basically, this is like you set up, what is the meaning of setup is, if the patient wants to transfer from his bed to a chair, then you set the chair for the patient and then patient completes the activity. Okay, helper assist only prior to or following the activity. So cleanup is basically even the occupational therapist in the US, they use the same kind of grading where they kind of do the cleaning up of the patient if needed. In our case, we don't do it. So mainly we do the setups. Cleanup can be a part of our job if it's needed. So, but we normally grade with setups in for grade 5. Sixth is independent. Now, this grade is called as patient completes the activity and there is no assistance from the helper. So now in this, there is something like a modified independent also, which is not written there. Modified independent is basically when patient is using some kind of a assistive device or some kind of a handrail or anything, but he is independent. So it's called as modified independent. So now I'm coming to the point. There are some grading 7, 9, 10, and 88. So whenever you grade the patient for not doing an activity, you need to code a reason. You need to state a reason. So when you start with a patient and patient says, I will not be able to do it, or he refuses, then we code them as 7. 9 is not applicable. For example, if a patient never did something like that, or any kind of an activity he never did. So that's why I said prior level of functioning is to be understood before we even start grading on the initial evaluation. So some of the activities, like there are patients who don't walk out of the house or on uneven surfaces. So we can put not applicable for those patients. 10 is not attempted due to weather or environmental constraints. Now, sometimes we want to score a patient for, we want to score a patient for a car transfer, but there is a bad weather on a particular day. So we can grade them as 10 not attempted. So we know, I mean, why we didn't do it. 88 is basically medical condition or safety concerns. Now, in the initial level of function, when we see a patient and we want that patient to be graded for walking, say, the patient cannot walk because of probably if he had a stroke and he's completely bedridden, he's not able to sit up, or he's not, when we evaluate and we attempt something, then we can grade. But because of his medical condition or safety concerns, we have to say 88. Basically, we did not grade. So we don't, but that doesn't mean that we cannot set future grades for scores for that patient to achieve. Coming back to the same thing, like there are conditions where we don't have helpers. Sometimes there is no help and we cannot do. So here again, it is 88 safety concerns. So when there is a concern that you cannot do it alone, then you use the score or code 88. So I'll go to the next slide now. Now we all know these assistive devices which are utilized. So I'm just going through because we are utilizing them even for coding and scoring. So assistive device includes standard walker, front wheel walker, that is 2-wheel walkers, 4-wheel walkers, loft stand crutch, that is the elbow crutch, auxiliary crutch, cord cane, single point cane, wheelchair. It is basically manual or motorized. Orthotics and prosthetics can be part of treatment goal along with the assistive device used. So this happens to be a very important thing, is because now when you do the scoring, why am I stating about the assistive device is we need to understand that how are they classified. They are classified as least assistive or restrictive. So basically we are looking at the assistive device which are more assistive. So a walker can be more assistive. A single point cane can be a least assistive. I would say even a wheelchair can be most assistive. So when we start our evaluation, we are looking at a point where we may need assistive device so that our patients can start utilizing for transfers and walking. Assistive device are mainly needed. I mean, in US, they also use other assistive device like leg lifts. Say for bed mobility, we have supine to sit. So there are leg lifters which we get, which are used by the patient to utilize to lift a weak leg and put it down, or put it up on the bed. There are bed rails which are also considered as assistive device. So we always can mention that our patient utilize this assistive device. We don't use those things in India. We normally use these assistive device. So I mentioned about this. but we always use it in a comment section that patient utilized a leg lifter or a bedside rail. The bedside rails are not the ones what we have in the hospital beds, but they are the ones which they are attachable and detachable. So they utilize that to sit up. So we need to mention that what was used as an assistive device. And when we set the goals, we can walk through those devices, like when we are going to see the patient getting better with there is a good prognosis. Patients, so we can always say that yes, I started with the patient with a standard walker, or I started the patient with a front wheel walker, and later on I could progress the patient to a point where the patient is now utilizing pod cane. So we have this benefit of in the coding that we are utilizing the assistive device and also actually grading it from least assistive, restrictive, from most assistive. So I'll go to the next slide now. Now, what is queuing? Queuing is basically whenever we are treating the patients, the queuing is most important part because it is important for scoring. As I've written here, we have queuing is verbal cues, visual cues, and tactile cues. Now, basically, whenever you are talking to the patient, instructing the patient, it's all the verbal cues. So whatever queuing you are doing with speaking to the patient, it's verbal cues. Then we have visual cues. Basically, when we visual cues are basically when we tell the patient look up in the mirror when the patient is walking in the parallel bars. So it's a visual cue. We are showing the mirror for a feedback. Tactile cues are basically when we tap the patient on the leg or the hand to just make sure that they are able to correctly lift their leg or hold a walker with the hand or positioning themselves, or no, this is all tactile cues whenever we touch the patient. Now coming back to, I'll just go back 2 slides. Now if you see, when you cue the patient, here you see grade 4, helper provides verbal cues or touching us. So here you see verbal cues. So here, even if it is visual cues, you can grade them as 4. So the score doesn't come to 5. In 5, the patient completes the activity without any cueing. And 6, obviously patient is. So whenever you give cues, make sure the scores are not graded as 5. Even if the patient is doing the entire activity, but you are cueing them for any reason, then it goes to 4. So that's why I mentioned about queuing in this slide. Now, this is an important thing in coding, which helps us to decide beforehand that this patient is how would you set your future scores for this patient? So I have this slide saying barriers to recovery. Now we have patients who have cognition issues, loss of memory, inability to focus, family involvement can be too much involved or they are not at all involved. Vision, there is a lot of challenge with recovery because people have vision issues. And mental status, there are a lot of patients which we see they have a lot of we see a lot of patients with type A personalities, or they are short tempered, impulsive. So this, and of course there are a lot of other factors which are not mentioned, which when we treat the patient, we analyze why patients are not recovering, or there are barriers to their recovery. So all that can help us to make our scores, make our goals more realistically. So that then we don't keep on treating patients for things that cannot be changed. A lot of these problems which are there within the patients, which are going to be barriers to recovery or the prognosis. So that's why I mentioned, and then our scores can always be less for the time they are treated. So I'll speak about that more when I'm showing some examples. Now, goal setting, why we do goal setting. So goal setting is important after initial evaluation and initial coding. So when you do the initial evaluation, today's topic is not about evaluation in detail. I'm talking only today about quality indicative measures. So, but I'll still say some things about initial evaluation. When we do initial evaluation, we should always be aware of the prior level of function of the patient. And, most important, I also consider family support in the initial evaluation and the occupation. So then I know what goals I'm going to set for my patients. So as I said, we have the short-term goals and long-term goals, which I spoke about. Now, what are the benefits is basically we can plan realistic short-term and the long-term goals. That is the most important thing that we should be doing is we should be having realistic goals. We are not going to treat the patient entirely. I am using this word managing the patient instead of treating. Most of us are good in treating the patients, but we are very bad in managing the patients. It's because we don't do this goal setting. We just start when we get a patient, we just start treating the patient. We do the initial evaluation based on a lot of the impairments, and then we think that the patient is going to get better, but a lot of the factors are not considered. That is the reason this topic is so important, and I felt that we are not getting our patients better is because we are not having ourselves having a realistic idea about how much the patient is going to get better. Now, goal setting helps in ensuring uniform treatment strategies and speedy and proper patient outcomes as per patient's diagnosis and prognosis. So this is very important that when we are treating the patient, we can set the strategies which are uniform, and we can get speedy outcomes because of that. I have got personally, I have seen this difference in when I have started utilizing this quality measures, that my patient outcomes are much more better. I'm able to answer my patients' queries, the families, they have all those questions. So I have a numeric data ready with me. So when I do the evaluation at the end, I have a numeric data. Then when I do the analysis, when I do the when I realize these are my short-term goals after analysis, then I have set those goals and we work on those goals. So the entire family works on those goals. We don't work on goals which are not going to work. This is a very analytical thing. After we all start using it, after we understand how to use it, we all will start analyzing our treatments, our our patients every time we see them. So when we go to a patient's house or when we are seeing the patient every day, before we get into the patient's house, we know what goal we have set for this patient and we'll work on that. We cannot try to get into the house of the patient and decide, okay, now what's my treatment for this patient today? We have set the goals, so we'll always work. Whatever type of skilled rehab we do will all be directed to that goal. So goal setting, now I'm going to continue with my points. Goal setting helps in analyzing patient outcomes and barriers to recovery during the treatment, which I already spoken. Goals must be set during admission and can be modified during a progress note. Now I'll speak on what is a progress note depending on patient's progress. If any new barriers are identified during treatments, goals must be modified accordingly. So now, why this progress note? We should be ideally doing daily notes. When we see a patient and we make a note of it, we write down that so this patient was given the treatment and what happened during the treatment. That becomes your daily note. Now, progress notes are meant for basically every 15 days. If you are seeing a long-term patient, then we normally do it every 15 days to see how much the patient has improved. So in a progress note, you can identify barriers if there are barriers, and you can modify the goals. Sometimes you set a goal and you realize that this cannot be possible for the patient. When you start treating the patient, you start realizing that realistically, these are some limitations which my patients are having, which I didn't identify in the start or the initial evaluation. So I did not take that into consideration because we don't know the patient. As we start treating, we start knowing them more better. So that is the time when we try to modify our goals. So that can be done during a progress note. So now going to the next slide. So yeah, I'm just trying to give some examples in this slide, how we put the goals. Now you can, if everyone can read, I'll just go through the first one. With the bed mobility, I have put a goal. Patient will improve bed mobility, supine to sit, rolling from assist of 2 to mod assist, that is mod assist of 1, and minimal verbal cues, tactile cues to decrease burden of care. Now this is how a goal is to be set, which gives a complete idea of what you are aiming for. I'll repeat that again. Patient will improve bed mobility. This is a bed mobility goal, that is supine to sit. Rolling, we assume rolling both sides normally. If there is a limitation, we mention rolling on the right side or rolling on the left side. If there is a limitation on any side, from assist of 2. Now, if there's a patient who needs assist of 2, now mod assist is basically, I'll be telling you the score. Mod assist can be a grade 3 and assist of 2 is grade 1. So you're progressing from grade 1 to grade 3 in this. Okay, so that is how it is. Max assist is grade 2. So grade 1 to grade 3 and minimal verbal and tactile cues. So when we are treating this patient, we had maximal verbal cues initially and maximum tactile cues. So we are aiming for minimal verbal cues and tactile cues to decrease the burden of care. So what does this end thing mention is basically you are decreasing the burden of care of the patient. That is the reason you set this goal. Now going to the next is patient will improve transfers. Now I have got to the goal for transfer. Patient will improve transfers, sit to stand, bed to chair, bedside commode using a front wheel walker. Contact guard assist. Now what is contact guard assist is grade 4. Okay. And minimal verbal tactile cues and no loss of balance to progress to walking. So what was my goal stating is, I will improve on the transfers of my patient, sit to stand, bed to chair, bedside commode. Now this patient may not be able to walk. That's why we are using a bedside commode. So we are not going to use the word toilet here because we are not yet got the patient to walking. So this will be your short-term goal, for example, so that because you started working on the patient and you're not put any goal, you're not got the patient walking yet. So this can be a short-term goal, which says that the patient, I have not mentioned of the initial state, like we can mention it, the patient, if the patient was able to transfer with max assist, then he was grade 2 and or maybe grade 1 if this is assist of 2 or total assist of 1, then it can be grade 1. And we are going to a grade, we are aiming for a grade 4 here. Contact guard assist is 4. And minimal verbal tactile cues and no loss of balance. Now here loss of balance is also important because we are aiming for an impairment. We are working on an impairment of balance. So we are trying to set a goal where the person will not have a loss of balance or a risk of fall so that he can progress to walking. Now the third goal, for example, is now I have taken about walking. Patient will improve walking in standard walker, non-weight bearing on left lower extremity. Now see, basically we get patients who have had a surgery. I have a patient who had a IT fracture and he was post 6 week. We got the goal to get the patient non-weight bearing walking for a distance of 50 feet. There are patients who cannot do that, so we can set them as 10 feet. Okay, so this can be like a goal which includes, like we have patients who can do full weight bearing, but there have been instructions where non-weight bearing has to be continued, or we get toe touch weight bearing. So we can mention TTWB there, or we can say partial weight bearing if they have 50% weight bearing. Okay, with 2 turns. Now here the goal is for 4, contact guard assist and no loss of balance or risk of fall with no verbal tactile cues on even surfaces to progress with walking, front full weight bearing on left lower extremity. So basically, if you read it again, here it is. So the next goal, we already put the wordings that we are looking at this future goal. So now what is the benefit of this type of, the way of writing the goals is anyone who is working in a team can actually see what is the goal. Like we have in the US, this is very important because we have PT assistants. They are legal over there to work, and they can't do initial evaluations and they cannot do goal setting. So that is the reason we need to make sure that we mention those goals very accurately, because if tomorrow, if the PT assistants, they start treating the patients and they are not aware, if they are not touched base with the PT, because they can change. We work in a lot of people, a lot of working on the patients, a lot of people working on the same patient. So in a teamwork, we have to make sure these goals are visible to everyone, that they don't change the goals. So if the patient is non-weight bearing, we can't get the patient full weight bearing. So there will be a major complication if the patient is non-weight bearing and a PT assistant. So in Indian conditions also, if you are working in a team, if the lead PT has set a goal and he has to make sure that the goal is followed by everyone, he has to make sure that it is appropriately worded, or else tomorrow there can be some problems because the communication gap always remains. So whenever you write the goals, you are also avoiding communication gaps. The fourth is now patient will improve going up and down one flight of stairs. One flight can be 8 or 10 or 12, holding to left handrail, standby assist. Okay, standby assist going up one step at a time with left lower extremity first and down with right lower extremity, respecting weight bearing precaution. So now we have good to the heaven and bad to the hell. We want to teach this. So we cannot write that like that here. We have all learned it that way. But what we are writing here is patient will improve going up and down one flight of stairs, holding to the left handrail. Okay, we have a patient who is going to, who is say we have a case of post TKA patient. So we have a patient who has had the right TKA. Then we would say left first and down with the right lower extremity first, respecting the weight bearing. We have weight bearing as tolerated. That is the instruction. So that is when we follow this. So here now I mentioned standby assist. So basically it will improve. It will say that obviously it is assumed that standby assist can be a grade of 5. We normally try to grade the patient's 5 realistically at the end of discharge, because there is always some risk of fall. I don't grade my patients up to 6 normally, unless they are really high functioning at the start of care. So we always, 5 is more realistic because that considers the patient's safety. If the patient is going to fall, there is a risk which is involved. So we have to make sure there is a standby assist. So here I have mentioned standby assist, and this can be a long-term goal when the patient may be discharged from your care. It can be a standby assist and he's maintaining. If we have instructions to go full weight bearing, then we can try to teach them other way around, where he can be utilizing the weaker leg for initiating the stairs. So that way we can modify our goals. Now the last one is about the wheelchair mobility, which I said, which is also very important. Patient will improve wheelchair maneuvering and mobility for 150 feet and 2 turns, standby assist, and no verbal cues to decrease burden of care. Now, this is a long-term goal. When we are done with a patient who has learned transfers and everything, he is able to get into the wheelchair, and we have taught him the wheelchair maneuvering and mobility, navigating the wheelchair. I'm talking, say, for example, it's manual wheelchair. So the manual wheelchair can be, now coming to a point I have not mentioned in this, we have stroke patients. Sometimes they can't, in US they do is utilizing the normal leg and the normal hand, and they do the wheelchair mobility and maneuvering. So we can mention that in our goals, like patient will improve wheelchair maneuvering and mobility with right upper extremity and the right lower extremity for assistance for 150 feet and 2 tons. And the therapist or the caregiver will be standby assist and should not be giving any verbal cues. So this is how a goal looks perfect to set. Now this involves a lot of analysis of what your patient can actually achieve, which will come with your working with the patients and your own acumen. You need to use that to set those goals. So now I'm coming to a point of discussion first. Again, like it is all just a summary of whatever I spoke. QIMS helps in improving patient outcomes. QIMS helps in improving communication regarding patient outcomes amongst the rehab team, which I mentioned earlier. QIMS helps in understanding prior level of function and achievable level of function in a patient following the medical or surgical condition leading to deterioration in level of function. So now I will be presenting some case studies which are of my own patients. I'll just not mention the names because they are real cases and considering the patient privacy. So here I have a patient, Mrs. UA. She is a 44-year-old female with a medical diagnosis of D6, D7 fixation post Cox spine, and physical diagnosis I have mentioned is loss of independent mobility. So I'll tell you about her a little more because I didn't want to put on more slides. I'll speak about it. Now this lady has a complete on evaluation. She had bilateral lower extremity. She was 0. And she was just developing spasticity grade 1. And then she had, I would say voluntary control was 0. Trunk control, I would say sitting balance was, I'm talking of impairments. Now sitting balance was poor. So when I started with her, I had to set goals, short-term goals, as I said about is basically bed mobility. So she was assist of 2, she was grade 1. we set goals of her to come to short-term goals where she came to a goal score of, I would say, I'm just now going to speak on numbers now. So we set a very easy goal for her because she was having a lot of other complications. So I set goals to 3, where she could do bed mobility and reach a score of 3. And her long-term goal was, we are looking at a we were looking at a condition where we would have this patient, if she gets better with her lower extremity strength, we are considering a window of say 2 months where we can see some improvement in voluntary control. So I set time frames and the goals, like now we are passing 2 months and we are seeing some improvement in her voluntary control. So I set goals for this patient for, I have not yet set goals for wheelchair mobility directly because we are not looking at paraplegic training. We are still looking at her to probably be able to get to a point where she'll be able to walk. So I set goals for bed mobility, transfers, walking in my long term, and I set goals for her bed mobility and transfers in my short term. So walking was not my goal in the short term, so I put it in the long term. So my long term was, after I said my short term goals will be for 1 month and my long term goals will be after 1 month. So we are following that and I'm getting the results also accordingly. So now we have like she has reached, in fact she is able to she's reached a goal of for her bed mobility, she's 4. I planned for 3. So she's contact guard assist and she's able to sit up. We have taught her how to sit up, how to mobilize her own lower extremities. Occasional assist is there. So she's somewhere between 3 and 4. I can't grade her every day as 4. So that's okay because some days we get patients doing better. Rolling, she's right now she's grade 4. She's contact guard assist. She's able to roll on both sides. With the transfers, I set her goals to, we have started with her sit to stand. So with the sit to stand, now we are at a level of I set goals for, very realistically I set goals for 2 with using a walker, standard walker. So this patient has actually progressed to a level grade of 2 only. So I was able to think about, that's what I said, when you do an initial evaluation, we can actually know what are you going to achieve. And the best thing about this is you always set lower goals and exceed them. We don't want to set higher goals and then not exceed that. We are not, then we realize we set too high goals. So I normally set what is the take home messages. Initially, if the patient's level, initially the patient is low functioning, he's grade 1, then you set very realistically low goals in the initial short term. As you see the patient daily, when you start doing your treatments, when you see the patient getting better, it is always better to start having long-term goals which can be more challenging, and you want your patient to achieve them. That time the patient is more medically stable, the patient is also more motivated, you are also more motivated. Yeah, I'm doing a good job and I should try to do better now with this patient, and that will help you to set higher goals later on. So short-term goals, I always be very realistic with patients like this, who are having zero voluntary control or very low functioning. It can be any other condition also. This is basically a neuro case, so that's why. Now there is a second Mr. IM, 67-year-old male, medical diagnosis left CVA and right side hemiplegia. Now physical diagnosis is loss of independent mobility. Again, it's a very broad word. So this patient, when I saw him, this patient, now I said, I'll tell you, this guy is a very interesting person. Like he's a he's a very short-tempered guy, very impulsive, type A personality. So when you see some patient like that, it's always better to set lower goals. That way you are not unhappy that you could get this patient, you couldn't get much out of this patient. I was the therapist who was called in because the patient was seen by some other therapist and the patient was not cooperating. And then he's also very uncooperative with me many times. So some of the days I go there, I just have tea and coffee and go. So this happens very commonly. I have explained to the family, they are very fine, but we are getting him better. So in the short term goals, like this patient, I have put in 3 months, this patient should be able to walk 10 feet. So we are not yet there. So 10 feet and contact guard. So you can see how I'm setting my goals here. I'm looking into the entire patient profile. So we are more realistic. This patient, he doesn't do anything. He just cannot do anything. He just gets, and his loss of speech is right-sided, so he has a motor aphasia, which is frustrating for him. So half of the time I'm acting as a counselor there. But we started, he started walking. He's assist of two because he's able to lift his right lower extremity at times. He's not, so his son or the helper helps me to lift his leg. We are getting him to a goal now. He's in fact he's mod assist for supine to sit. His mod assist for sit to stand. So we are getting some gains here. And in my progress notes, I always try to analyze a lot about this patient, so I can see, yeah, this guy is getting better on this thing. So let's try to have more benefit. Then I can set some home exercise program where I don't waste my time, because we are limited by a lot of time factors when we do home calls. So a lot of things I don't treat, then I just tell the family to take care of it and make sure that they achieve those. So they have the scores over there and the goals. So they are also following when I am not treating. So then I'm not responsible for a lot of things there, because we have to be very realistic with, because at the end the patient, the relatives will think there is no improvement. That is the biggest frustrating thing, that when we do everything, still we get to hear that my patient has not done well, this patient, and then family tries to call some other therapist. This is very common. That is why I wanted to speak, that we have a lot of people who are new into the profession, and they, when face challenging cases, challenging families, sometimes it is very frustrating, and this scoring and coding can be most helpful for them. So I will go to my next patient. Now this is an easier case. I had this guy, he's left hip IT fracture post fixation DHS, 6 weeks, non-weight bearing, and then progressing to, I didn't mention that, but he was, we were, we were to progress him to non-weight bearing. And this patient was, he hadn't set up for almost 6 weeks after the surgery. So our goals were basically to get him to a point where he'll be able to roll both sides, maintaining hip precautions and supine to sit. And I knew this guy is well motivated, so there were no other patient factors here. So we got to those goals. My short-term goals were I looked at 3 weeks. I set them for 3 weeks, and because my long-term goals are going to be after the doctor's his suggestion. I mean, I would say that he would give us the orders to do the full weight bearing or partial weight bearing. So my short-term goals were 3 weeks, because he had the follow-up after 3 weeks. So I had to make sure that we achieve those goals. And I could very confidently text the doctor that this patient is independent, supine to sit. He is contact guard assist, sit to stand, bed to chair. And we are making him walk 10 feet non-weight bearing. Now here, 10 feet non-weight bearing, because we don't want the patient to jump around the house. So sometimes their weight is less, and they can do all the jumping around with with non-weight bearing. But when you see a patient 74 year, we don't want to have goals for 50 feet non-weight bearing jumping around on the walker. And what walker we are using? A front wheel walker. So we have to set goals accordingly, and then we are able to achieve them. There are no goals for full weight bearing and staircase here, because they are part of my long-term goals now. So these are my 3 case studies. I can put a lot of cases, because I see a lot of different cases around, and it's very interesting because it is a very analytical thing. On every patient, I do an initial evaluation, complete initial evaluation and goal setting, and then I progress with progress notes and modifying their goals. Now going to the quiz, I don't know how we can have this. I want some people to answer and speak. I put up a quiz so I know how many people actually understood what I spoke. I mean, there are a lot of people who came in late, but I don't know how they will be able to answer. So should I get, I would like to know how we'll get the answers for this scores.
Dr. Alap, maybe you can ask the students to by themselves unmute and then answer your questions.
Okay, actually what has happened, I'll just minimize the screen to, I have a very, sorry, I'll just try to, can I get the answers in the message box here? That will be better.
Yes, we can tell them that also. You can give them that instruction.
Okay, all right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'll just minimize that, and then I'll, one second, oh, lost a lot of things. I'm not very good at this. Okay, I'm just going to read it. They can type the answer. I'll see in the message box. Now this is Winnie walks 100 feet with 2 turns using a 2-wheel walker, min assist from PT and helper to push her oxygen trolley. Now, what will be the grade of this? What would you score this patient? She walks 100 feet with 2 turns using a 2-wheel walker, min assisted. Okay, from the PT and helper to push her oxygen trolley. Now, this patient has a oxygen post-COVID patient. So we have an oxygen trolley also here. We have to see that maybe that cannot be ignored. We need the oxygen trolley. How can you grade this patient? How much would you grade this patient? Anyone can answer this. I will just check when I get an answer. I'm sorry, is anyone answering this?
Please write your answers in the chat box.
I'm not able to see any answers.
For this answer?
No, they have to just grade it. I'm not giving any options because that will be okay. What we can do is I think if anyone has okay, I can give the options if they want. Grade can be 1, 3, or 5. I'm just giving the 3 options. So will it be 1, 3, or 5?
So we have
So can you see the chat box?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to. Let me see if I'm.
The answers which is given by students 3 and 5.
Okay, so I'll correct them, ma'am, because I'm not able to see the chat box. I'm sorry. We need, so here basically there is an helper. So the grade goes to 1 because the patient has to be taught to push his oxygen trolley also. Whenever we have an oxygen trolley there, like I'm saying, in Indian conditions, it can be a little difficult. That's why we can grade it higher. But ideally, I put this deliberately because I wanted people to understand when you have a helper, the grade always goes lower. It can be even for any other reason. Even if there is a helper who is assisting the patient in moving the leg, it becomes a grade 1. So you know that this patient is not on a higher grade other than, because there are assist of 2 here actually. So in US, they use this as grade 1 only. They don't use it, they don't utilize the higher grade here.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, please, ma'am.
Yeah, so if the patient is walking on her own, only the trolley needs to be pushed along. So shouldn't you grade it higher?
See, ma'am, what happens? They expect us to teach the patient to even ideally, push the oxygen trolley. So if they can't push the trolley, we can utilize the higher grade depending on the other scores. Like here, if it is a min assist and there is a realistic situation where the helper has to do it, where the patient cannot, then we can go to a grade higher, which is 3 for this patient. So your question is correct, ma'am. I just put this question so people don't miss on the helper actually. And we have patients who can actually push their trolleys. So we can actually teach them to do that. That is the reason I put this question. It can be very analytical, either a 3. And if it's the patient is a setup, it will be 5, because then we are not helping the patient. Patient is able to do everything. He's able to achieve the goal of 100 feet. And there is no need of helper. So when we want the patient to be 5, we need to consider this factor as well. With the patient with post-COVID, we will be seeing a lot of the patients using oxygen in their initial stages. So we have to try to see that they are able to even be independent, and they can. The aim of mobility is to make sure they are completely independent as much as possible or else.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, ma'am, please.
Will the age of the patient be taken into account when you're grading?
Yeah, ma'am, that's what I said. See, when you are evaluating the patient, it's your own acumen and analysis which tells you to put up a grade which you are going to achieve. So this is a question for just for grading. It's a quiz, so you know the questions can be a little
Okay.
random. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Should I go to the next question, ma'am? Our next quiz question.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. John is able to climb 4 steps at the stairwell and get down as well. I mean, he's climbing up the stairs and get down using left handrail. Contact guard assist from his PT, but needs assist at his left lower extremity during ascent and descent from a helper. So again, the question is here now. So I'm sure now people will be able to grade this better. I'm seeing some answers, I think. Yeah, now I can see the now for the second, can you grade this? Anyone can grade it now. Just type in your answers. I'll be able to see. Do you want me to read the question again?
If you could, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So John is able to climb 4 steps at the stairwell. Okay, I'm sure everyone is aware what is a stairwell. Basically, it is the flight of stairs in the staircase area in our societies. So that is a stairwell area. Is able to climb 4 steps at the stairwell and get down using left handrail, contact guard assist from his PT, but needs assist at his left lower extremity during ascent and descent from a helper.
So students have answered as a 3 is the answer.
Okay, see now, as I said, this is again a thing which, if you think the answer can be 1 or 3, why? Because there is again an helper involved here. The patient is not able, he needs assist to lift his left lower extremity. So basically, if you think that patient will never be able to, and he's still going to be a, he'll need assist, then you can grade him that, okay, you have set your goals as 3, but this problem is always going to be a barrier that he will not be able to, though there are patients who can achieve it later on. So we can ideally grade this as 1, because there is an assist at his left lower extremity. If the patient is able to later on achieve it, then you will be able to get that patient to that level, then you grade 1. If you think that patient cannot be, he cannot reach that level because of whatever reasons you have evaluated, then the patient can be given a little bit of a higher grade. Again, if you see as a contact guard assist, we always grade it as 4. So the answer can be 4 if the left lower extremity problem can be there, which is not new. The patient always needed an assistance from his left lower extremity, and you have improved the patient that he's able to climb the 4 steps and come to a point of contact guard assist. Then you put it as 4. But as I said, if you are going to work for 4, and this is a new problem where the patient can get better with lifting his left lower extremity. We see this quite a lot in the stroke patients. So we want them to get better. If there is a left hemiparetic patient, we want them to learn to lift the left lower. So your grade should be 1 for this type of a situation. And working towards 4, the patient will be contact guard, but he will improve to lift his own leg, and then he can get to a score of 4. So this makes your treatment more more better, that you have not yet got to a point where you will start working to teach the patient to lift his left lower extremity better, that he's able to ascend and descend the stairs. Now, the third question is, Rajesh is able to roll both sides of the bed and sit up in bed without assistance and verbal cues. Now, this is an easy question. I'll repeat again. Rajesh is able to roll both sides of the bed and sit up in bed, that is supine to sit, without assistance and verbal cues. It's a very easy, I'm sure everyone can answer it. You can type the answer. Yes, good.
Dr. Alap, there is a little query from a student in the chat box. If
Okay,
you could
I'll
please
just, I'm
review
just
all the
reading.
grading so that will help
Sure.
our students to answer your quiz better.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to go down. There is a question I could see. Yeah, there is a question saying, according to the grades you explained, grade 1 is when helper does all the effort. See, when the assist of 2 comes also, it becomes grade 1. So because there is a assist of 2, it is grade 1. There's a question I can see from Gauri Tike. which he's asking me that why I said grade 1 for this patient. So yeah, because this patient has assist of 2. In the quiz, we have those first 2 questions. Why I put them as a lower grade, that I'm looking at the future condition where they will not need the assist of the second person. Why we lower the scores is to make sure that we are able to achieve a higher goals we have set for the patient. We put these patients as 3 or 4, we will not be able to achieve any more higher goals for them. So we want to make sure that if they can be modified, they can be improved, we need to try to grade them lower. And here patient is needing assist of 2, so we put grade 1. Of course, if the total assist is there even with 1 person, then it can be grade 1 as well. So I hope I answered that question correctly. Hello.
Thank you, sir. There are
Okay.
certain students who have answered 6 as an answer for your third question.
Yeah, that was an easy question I put in because I wanted just to understand what is a 6. Of course, here you have to also consider that like here I have not mentioned other details, so it's 6. Like standby assist for safety, if it comes, then it comes to 5. I'm talking about Rajesh. He's able to roll both sides of the bed and sit up in bed without assistance and verbal cues, so he's definitely a 6. But if there is something called a standby assist for safety, then he comes to a kind of a, it is exactly not a 6, we put it as a 5 because there is some kind of a standby assist available there. It can be even a 4 if there is verbal cues. So now go to the fourth question here is Joyce is able to complete transfers, sit to stand, bed to chair, toilet in front wheel walker, contact guard assist and minimal verbal cues. Now what will be the answer to this? I will, if you want, I can give options, but I think it's very easy. That's why I'm not giving any, any options. I can see an answer, I think. I'll wait once everyone answers. Yeah. So yeah, we are getting the correct answers. That is 4. Now we'll just analyze. Everyone can answer still. I'm just trying to go so I don't go out of my time. See here, it is basically we have got contact guard assist. So definitely it's a 4 and minimal verbal cues. So basically we have got some verbal cues here. So we got this as 4 correctly. Okay. Now next is Ram walks 10 feet using a cord cane and refuses to walk further, stating shortness of breath. Now what can be the scoring for this? I'm just repeating the question. Ram walks 10 feet using a cord cane and refuses to walk further, stating shortness of breath. Now I have not mentioned what is the level of assist right now, for obvious reasons, because I know there should be a straight answer to this. And I would have put in standby assist. You can put in anything in that, but we are looking at logically a medical condition here. So what will be the grading for this? I'm sorry. I just tried kind of. Sorry, I just not able to go back.
Few students are putting in their answers as 88.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to that, but just want to make sure I'm on my screen with the presentation. But I'm not able to get in. So. Yeah, I'll just, I don't know what's I'm trying to scroll through on my computer. So answer here is not 88, here it's 7 because he refused. So yeah, he refused. When the patient refused, it has to be 7. When you don't test the patient without a refusal, it is 88. So this is why I put this question. Here the answer is 7. 7 is basically patient refused. So here he refused to go further. Of course, the condition was medical. It can be anything else also that the patient simply refuses because he is not in the mood. Sometimes he's impulsive. So we can put in 88. I'm sorry, that is 7. We can put in a medical condition directly, like the patient cannot do it, then it will be 88. So in this case, it is a 7 because I want the people to, when word refusal comes, I will not do it. I'm sorry, I don't want to do it. Whatever can be the reason. It can be a medical, it can be any other condition. We need to put it a 7. So that's why I put this question. 1 second now. Let me see if I can get back to my slide. I'm having some problem. I'll just stop share for a minute and come back, so I know what's the problem.
Sir, if you can please start screen share again.
Yeah, I know. I'm facing a problem here. I want to start my screen share. I'm not able to navigate further. I'll just try to screen share and then see what. Yeah, I think I'm able to. Is my screen share? Yeah, I'm just sharing now. So here I'll just go to the slide again. It's just, yeah, sorry. So yeah, I'm able to now. Okay. So I hope you could understand why we put in a 7, because we had this person refusing. So anytime you get a refusal, just simply grade it as 7. Now here is the next question. Anish is unable to walk 10 feet due to paraplegia. Now this is the initial evaluation. So here the answer is 88. I will not take time because I know everyone will say that answer. Here is when you use 88. Okay. And here is when you use 7. Now last is Jason completes wheelchair maneuvering and mobility for 150 feet with 2 turns, needing occasional verbal cues to avoid hitting the walls. He does not need any assist. So this question, again, as I said, why I put this is basically is to understand is he needs occasional verbal cues to avoid hitting the walls. Now, okay, what can be the answer for this? I can see an answer here. So
students have answered.
yeah, I saw it's as 4 mainly. I've seen the answer. It's 4 basically. Yeah, it's correct. The answer is 4 because here he doesn't need assist, but he needs cues to avoid hitting the walls. Sometimes they are maneuvering and they are not able to keep the wheelchair without hitting the walls. So that is the reason here the score goes to 4. So now you can understand why this scoring helps us. You can see your patient is doing accurately what, and you're creating a numeric value for it. If it's a 5, you know what is a 5, you know what is a 6. You know all the scores. I can always share all the literature later on for this, so you have something to remember. And I'll just go to the next question. I think we are done with the quiz. I'm just going to go to the I'm facing some problem scrolling further. I'll have to go this way. So I'm just going to the conclusion. Then we have a question answer. We have some question answer session if you need to. So the conclusion is every PT must take effort to include QIMS in their evaluation to improve treatment and patient outcomes. QIMS helps the patient and family understand patient's level of function and recovery potential in a numeric value. QIMS help in making treatment uniform across different PTs working together and eliminating individual bias. So now the first 2 points I have mentioned is I have already spoken. I'll still, and the third point I'm speaking is very important is when we are working as a team, we work in hospitals, we are working in sometimes we are co-treating the patient. There are therapists to do that. So when we have this goal setting done, we can eliminate individual. इनका treatment अच्छा था, इनका treatment इतना अच्छा नहीं था. We all hear all this. So we don't want our therapist to someone feeling inferior with his work. Everyone is good and they treat. It's a skill-based profession. We all treat patients differently. So what happens is why the work gets appreciated if there is something what we score the patients on, and we ourselves can put ourselves to a higher pedestal if we try to achieve set goals which the patient can achieve. We don't want to take responsibility for everything which patient cannot do, and patients always want us to take the responsibility. We want the patient to be therapy dependent, not therapist dependent, which is the main take home message. So that is why this QIMS is so important, and I'm sure after the presentation everyone, everyone will start using QIMS. If you are treating any patients at home, you will start relating to it, that what I have been doing, am I able to take this patient to the right level where they can go? So the main aim is of QIMS is all this. Now the question answers, and then it will be end. Yeah. So if any questions, you can write in the chat box. I'll try to answer whatever I can to my best of ability.
Does anyone has any questions for sir? Please type in the chat box.
I'm also coming up with a software which will include quality scores. Myself, I'm building it up, which will be very, I'm working with software people who are helping me out. So it can be included in the scorings and included in the initial evaluation, daily notes, progress notes, and discharge summary. So all the time you are scoring the patient. Daily notes can be a tedious task. So, we can always do, because if we are working in a fast-paced private practice where we are running around with going to patients' houses, it can be difficult to score them. So we could always do a weekly notes, something like not a daily but weekly notes, which can be like at the end of the week, what was your, how much could you achieve? So I'm working on a software which will include all the numeric values, and at the end of we have a summary of all the scorings. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much sir, for sharing your clinical expertise. I, on behalf of KJ Somaiya College of Physiotherapy, want to express our appreciation to Dr. Rala for webinar on quality measures. It was extremely informative and we have learned a lot. Thank you, sir. I wish to thank Dr. Shweta Manvadkar, our principal, giving us an opportunity to invite Dr. Rala. She could not attend today's session, but she has given the best wishes to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, madam.
I'm sharing my email address right now. So if anyone has any queries,
Sir, you can
or to come to see when I'm treating patients at home, and there are some people who I can always, welcome. I mean, they are welcome to see how I work and how I score. That time they can always, that will be a real patient situations. In COVID situation, we have limitations, but I can always try to help people who want to do that.
Okay, sir. Thank you. This event would not have been possible without a support from team members. I hereby would thank Somaiya Vidyavihar IT team for providing with the Zoom platform, our IT team, Dr. Mugdha Oberoi for technical support, and Ms. Harsha Khilani, intern, for making flyer for this webinar. I would like to thank workshop committee member Dr. Anjali Puntambekar for communicating with Dr. Alap to make this webinar happen. Lastly, my dear students and respected faculty members, thank you for paying unwearying attention throughout the lectures. Thank you all. In the chat box, the feedback form has been given to everyone. Kindly fill in the feedback form for today's webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank everyone for listening to me patiently, and entire faculty of Somaiya College for allowing me to take this lecture. This was my first presentation after I learned quality indicative measures, and that's why I am very much happy that I could present it and bring it to our students and our physiotherapists here in India. And also, I'm just to put a last word is I'm also guiding for PT credentialing and licensure process. In this COVID situation, things are very challenging for PTs who are desiring to work in US. I personally kind of have gone through the entire process on my own without any kind of agency help or anything, which are a lot of fraudulent measures they have. So I would like to, if any physiotherapist is going through the process or desiring to, they can always email me their queries and I can guide them. This is not part of the webinar, but who are desiring to work in the US later on, I can always guide them for that. So thank you so much for everything.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This brings us to the today's webinar. Kindly fill in the form which is given in the feedback form and note down Dr. Alap's email ID in case if you have any queries regarding. Thank you, everyone.